An audio clip of Jacinda Ardern talking about moving the capital to Auckland.
But it is more around, well, what plan have we got in place to try and scale up there?
So why can't we get that scale in Wellington?
Do you know, I love Wellington, and it's a phenomenal place. It's a beautiful place, but there is such an obvious disparity with infrastructure, access to services.
So you're saying we're moving capital?
Look, if you look to Auckland, business has asked this government that if we want to boost the environment they operate in, that means we have to keep moving, we have to make changes.
The company behind those Twisted Words Cut, wanted to show how easy it was to manipulate the words of politicians, saying it took them only about 2 hours to cut up speeches our Prime Minister has made and edit them together. So we talked about this briefly last week, but this came out, this Joe Biden edit, Cindy, and many people were fooled. They thought, my goodness, and it made him into be a dottery old man. I think that was the intention, that he couldn't get his words out properly.
Well, it's the deep fake, isn't it? Or a more obvious deep fake. And I think we have to be really careful. The whole native advertising thing, which is content which is paid for. We have to be able to have some form of legislation is the wrong word, but some form of guidelines for transparency. It is so easy to, anyone can, with Final Cut Pro, can, cut and edit anything. And so I think it's really important, particularly around political advertising, that we do try to mitigate this level of fake.
Very chilling how these can just sort of have a life of their own, and actually when they take effect, people will notice them, and actually they keep on going. For example, we played last time around that Nancy Pelosi clip, didn't say anything wrong, it was just slightly slowed down, and really it did sound as if she were drunk. Called into her question her integrity, her authenticity. It was quite shocking.
I'm wondering if it will work, though, in New Zealand. I wonder if New Zealanders are just getting a bit wise to this. So
right.
We've seen the stories from the States and we've seen the doctoring. We know there's an army of fact checkers. So it may not work as a tactic in New Zealand in quite the same way that it's worked in other jurisdictions. I might be an unbelievable optimist, I'm not sure. But I do think if a political party played that trick and got caught out, literally it would be so disadvantageous to them. So I'm hopeful that it won't become a feature of the New Zealand political scene.
Well, I am sure that New Zealanders are as likely to be caught out as anybody. New Zealanders are stockpiling toilet paper, and we do make it here.
Back to the toilet paper, Cindy.
Yeah, you asked me to tell you what I was stockpiling.
Yes, what are you stockpiling?
I have only stockpiled one thing, and
What's that?
Cucumber tonic, because it is very hard to get. Fever Tree cucumber tonic is very hard to get anyway, and if we have to be staying at home, we can't without our cucumber tonic.
You can't be serious.
I am completely serious.
How much tonic have you ordered?
I've ordered 6 boxes, and it's been delivered, and it's free delivery if you got 5 boxes or more. So I've been a budget bride as well.
You've bought into the panic.
Yeah, I've only driven the cucumber market mad.
Oh my goodness. Cindy Mitchener, Chris Clark, thank you so much for being with me on the panel this afternoon. Checkpoint next. I'm Wallace Chapman. See you tomorrow, 3:45. Till then, bye.
Whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere aki nei, COVID-19 infects the New Zealand Stock Exchange with a dramatic slide on opening before a bounce back following a bleak day on global markets. Italy wakes up to a nationwide lockdown as it ramps up measures to contain coronavirus. Cinemas, sports stadiums and restaurants are off limits, and New Zealanders are warned not to travel there unless it's absolutely essential. Almost a year on from the mosque massacres, we bring you the story of a survivor who was shot 9 times. A man accused of slavery claims he brought 5 Samoan workers to New Zealand to perform for his mother's birthday, but they did a runner. And Harry and Meghan officially clock off as senior royals.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora ko Susana Leata tēnei. The Reserve Bank says it's looking at a range of unconventional tactics it could use, if necessary, to control economic fallout, such as from the coronavirus. The central bank's outlined measures such as negative interest rates, special bank loans or buying government bonds, which might be used to stimulate the economy when normal policy is ineffective. Its Governor Adrian Orr says the bank will consider all relevant information on the virus and the economy when it reviews the cash rate in 2 weeks.
But we want to do that in the best and fullest information, not some knee-jerk reaction. Because New Zealand doesn't need a knee-jerk reaction, we're in a good space. And I'm not sure a knee-jerk reaction would be particularly useful. It certainly wouldn't be necessary.
Reserve Bank head Adrian Orr. Some economists have called for an immediate rate cut to support activity. The New Zealand market has ended the day well off its lows following a round of panic selling that saw overseas markets dive overnight. The NZX Top 50 index was down nearly 5% in early trading but rose through the day on improved sentiment. A promise by the United States President Donald Trump to develop an aid package for businesses gave Asian markets a confidence boost, with the Australian market bouncing back from yesterday's more than 7% fall. That sentiment offset some negative New Zealand economic data showing business confidence is down, matched by some weak retail and trade numbers. The New Zealand dollar was a little changed. A New Zealander on a Kontiki tour in Europe says he was glad to get out of Italy just before the entire country was put into lockdown over COVID-19. Jack Milner-George says the virus outbreak had affected his group's itinerary and their planned 2 nights in Venice were canned in favour of an extra night in Rome. They left the country by bus, driving straight through northern Italy without stopping. While he's enjoyed his trip, he's looking forward to getting home.
New Zealand is just where I want to be at the moment, but I'm glad I'm out of Italy because I think I'm good, but there's other people on the trip that might have been freaking out a little bit, and then obviously people freaking out just causes more panic.
Jack Milner-George. A Southland man who stole 2 police pistols and a patrol car has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. Hori Gemmell was arrested near Gore in August last year after more than 30 hours on the run. Gemmell rammed a patrol car before fleeing on foot when the police tried to pull him over shortly before midnight on August the 14th. He returned and stole the police car, ramming another patrol car before stealing the 2 Glock pistols from a car gun safe. In Invercargill District Court, Judge Bernadette Farnan said Gemmell was in breach of his prison release conditions.
You also had prior convictions for violence. You escaped lawful custody in 2016 and you previously assaulted the police in 2016. You have a number of convictions for breaching court orders as well as a number of dishonesty convictions, including a significant history for burglary offending. You are aged 24.
Judge Bernadette Farnan. The Prime Minister says enough is enough after RNZ revealed yesterday a charity that stopped operating 5 years ago has continued to pay its board members tens of thousands of dollars each year. The Quit Group, the charity commissioned to run Quitline, created a trust under the same name, which has been hoarding more than $3 million in reserves. More than $400,000 of that is from the Ministry of Health. The Ministry has no power to recoup the money given to the Quit Group, but Jacinda Ardern says that's beside the point.
For me, that is neither here nor there. They have a social obligation. That was to help people quit smoking. If they're not going to spend it on that, give it back and shut down.
Jacinda Ardern. It's coming up to 4 minutes past 5. The Black Sticks have pulled out of the upcoming Pro League matches in the Netherlands and Germany. Hockey New Zealand and CEO Ian Francis says the risk of travelling is too great as COVID-19 spreads in Europe.
Both those countries have increased the risk even in the last week and over the weekend in terms of being at local transmission level. So just due to the increased risk with our teams going, we made the decision in the best interest of our players and support staff and their health, safety and wellbeing to postpone the tour.
Ian Francis. All Black Beauden Barrett remains coy about when he'll make his debut for his new Super Rugby franchise, but Blues coach Leon MacDonald does not expect to have him in the back line until mid-April. That timing could have Barrett, who took part in his first public training session today, back against a Hurricane side that includes his brother Geordie.
As to when I return, it's up to the coach. He picks the team. It's up to me to get myself right physically and mentally, to learn all the plays, the new calls. It's like learning a different language at the moment, so I'm really enjoying that challenge.
Bowden Barrett. The All Blacks' rest weeks have hit the Highlanders as they struggle to keep their Super Rugby season alive. The Highlanders, with just one win from their first 5 games, will be without All Blacks Aaron Smith and Liam McColtman for their crucial match against the Jaguars in Argentina on Sunday morning. The pair have returned to New Zealand as part of the controversial All Blacks player management plan. That's the news.
It's nearly 1 year since 51 Muslims, men, women and children, were killed while praying in 2 Christchurch mosques.
4 widows have allowed us to walk alongside them as they navigate a new world in the wake of the tragedy. Widows of Shuhada, a podcast made by Plains FM for RNZ, with a special double episode tonight at 8:30 and then after the 9 o'clock news on nights on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow, Northland to Manawatu, including Coromandel Peninsula, Taumaranui and Taihape. Fine spells and a few showers, clearing from the south tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine today, apart from isolated showers in Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Scattered showers tomorrow afternoon and evening, some possibly heavy. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington and Wairarapa. A few showers developing with a southerly change tonight, then clearing tomorrow. Nelson and Buller, fine spells and scattered showers. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers, some heavy and possibly thundery, clearing in Marlborough tonight and Canterbury tomorrow. Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from isolated showers about southern Fiordland, clearing tomorrow. Otago and Southland, rain easing to isolated showers, then becoming fine tomorrow morning. Chatham Islands, periods of rain. RNZ National, it's coming up to 7 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. Another day, another wall of red. Markets around the world have been shaken by a perfect storm of the coronavirus and an oil shock. Just a few minutes ago, the NZX closed down 194 points, or about 1.7%. That's better than this morning when the NZX Top 50 was down around 5% in early trading. Mackenzie Smith reports.
It's been a long 24 hours for global markets. London's FTSE down more than 7%. On Wall Street, where it was meant to be the anniversary of the US stock market's longest ever bull run, a trading halt was called, a first in more than 30 years. When the day was over, Wall Street had suffered its biggest one-day loss since the 2008 financial crisis. A financial advisor to global investment company Allianz, Mohammed Al-Arian, says recessions around the world now appear inevitable.
We're going to have recessions in many countries. That includes Germany, Italy, Singapore, Japan, and that list is going to get longer. Korea. The United States, it's still a 50-50 situation, but if the market disruptions continue and if the coronavirus fear amplify, then unfortunately we will.
The dramatic slide followed weeks of economic fears over the spread of COVID-19, but it was tipped over the edge by an oil price standoff between Russia and Saudi Arabia. By Monday, oil prices had posted their biggest fall since the Gulf War. A managing director at investment company Eurasia Group, Robert Johnston, says there's now a glut of oil production that could last a while.
The bottom line is we have a big imbalance in the oil market. We're going to have the first year-over-year demand correction since 2008, 2009, and we have too much oil. So where will the adjustment come from?
Locally, the effects have been immediate. And good news for drivers. Petrol prices at the pump dropping suddenly and sharply. Z Energy has cut petrol prices at 90% of its Caltex and Z service stations by up to 7 cents a litre. Energy and Resources Minister Megan Woods says she'll be keeping an eye on petrol companies.
We're seeing, I think, a 37% decrease in the price of crude this year in New Zealand. We know how quickly prices going up of crude are passed on to motorists, so I'll be looking to see that those savings are also passed on to motorists.
Aucklander Peter Fahey is enjoying the cheaper prices.
I just can't understand what's exactly happened, but it's certainly made a dramatic effect overnight, I notice.
But Mr Fahey is also worried about his personal investment fund as shares drop. Financial advisor Martin Hawes says most KiwiSaver funds will be facing reduced funds due to the market upheavals. But he says those unhappy should invest in less risky schemes. And it's not all bad news.
This whole downturn presents an opportunity for KiwiSaver funds, because when this shakes out, it'll actually be really good for equities. We'll be left with very low interest rates. The world will continue on a growth trajectory. It's not Armageddon.
Economists here are forecasting a recession, though different from that of 2008. Westpac senior economist Michael Gordon says this will likely be more conventional.
No two recessions are the same, but this is likely to be in the form of a consumer-led slowdown, and that will have consequences. There will be business failures, as there are in any normal recession, but does it lead to the point where credit markets lock up because no one knows who to trust? That was quite a unique scenario.
Business confidence in the first week of March has certainly fallen. The preliminary ANZ Business Confidence Survey out today indicates all key activity indicators fell from February, including prices. And provisional trade data for February, released today, has confirmed exports and imports to and from China dropped last month. ANZ Chief Economist Sharon Zollner says firms' own activity is at the lowest in 11 years.
We saw every indicator fall. What was encouraging is that employment intentions and investment intentions, while they fell, they're still back to where they were around August and September last year. The one indicator that really fell out of bed was export intentions. That was the lowest it's ever been, including the GFC period. So that was certainly one out of the box.
The Chief Executive of Business New Zealand, Kirk Hope, says those reliant on industries like tourism and forestry will be hit hardest.
Some of those businesses, they will already shut their doors. Others will be continuing to operate because they're able to tap into local demand, but they will be doing it tough.
Local retailers are also expecting things to get worse. A survey of Retail NZ members found 70% expect to have cash flow difficulties and 30% have already cut staff hours. Retail NZ Chief Executive Greg Harford says discretionary spending is one of the first areas to be scrimped on.
Our sense is that some customers have indeed lost incomes, lost livelihood over the last few weeks. That's just made people a little bit nervous, and if people don't need to spend, they're stopping.
Business New Zealand's Kirk Hope says government initiatives to support businesses are positive, and anyone affected should talk to their bank and the IRD. For Checkpoint, Mackenzie Smith.
Italy is officially in lockdown after the government extended its coronavirus quarantine measures to the entire country. Italy is the worst affected country in Europe, with nearly 500 dead from the illness in the 2.5 weeks since it was first discovered there. There's now a ban on all public gatherings and people are only allowed to travel for work. New Zealand's government is advising against all non-essential travel to Italy, and officials are looking at whether stricter border controls are needed for people arriving from there. Nita Blake-Person reports.
Italy's iconic gondolas now across the country. 60 million people, not to mention the tourists, will only be able to travel for work, medical reasons or emergencies until April the 3rd.
È per questo che sto per firmare un provvedimento.
Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte announced the unprecedented clampdown today aimed at beating the coronavirus in Europe's worst affected country. He said the entire nation had to make sacrifices to stop the spread of the illness, which he described as Italy's darkest hour. The government ordered cinemas, theatres and museums to close, told shops and restaurants to ensure the patrons remained at least a metre apart. All schools and universities, which were closed last week until March 15th, now won't reopen before next month. Any public gatherings are now banned and all sports events, including top-flight Serie A soccer matches, suspended. The outbreak only came to light in Italy near Milan on February the 21st. Now, just 2.5 weeks later, there are more than 9,000 cases across the country and 463 people are dead. Camilla Strumia lives in Milan and says the severe measures are necessary.
Chemists are open and only one person is allowed in at a time, and people are queuing outside chemists. And supermarkets are stocked with food and supplies, but there's hardly anybody going to them. And in general, around town and on the streets, there's not very many people. Pedestrians stand at traffic lights at least a metre away from each other. The energy is not amazing, and in general, people are very to themselves and suspicious of each other.
But she says not everyone is taking the outbreak seriously.
You know, everybody was running away from Milan on Saturday to go to southern Italy. I had an opportunity of leaving Lombardy and not being locked in and joining my family in Rome. And I decided not to, and I'd rather, sit at home and risk being unwell and not having anybody to look after me rather than travelling and going to see my family and be close to family who could look after me, but also that I could make sick. So it's a lot about, not being selfish and about being responsible, I think.
New Zealand's government has upgraded its travel advice, advising against all non-essential travel to all of Italy. Auckland man Jack Milner-George is on a Kentucky tour in Europe. He left Italy by bus just hours before the new restrictions were announced. He and other members of the group were surprised there weren't more stringent checks at the border or temperature tests.
It could have been a bus full of people who were infected. And we're not, we're all good, everyone's fine, but no one knows. Literally anyone could have just gone through.
And he says he's glad to be out of Italy.
Because if I was stuck in Italy, I just want to go back to New Zealand now. I'm loving my trip, but New Zealand is just where I want to be at the moment. But I'm glad I'm out of Italy because I think I'm good, but there's other people on the trip that might have been freaking out a little bit, and then obviously people freaking out just causes more panic. So that was the main thing for me.
New Plymouth teenager Emily Hutching-Goff is working as an au pair in Rome. The 19-year-old recently returned from a trip to Naples, which has spooked the family she's working for.
They were a bit worried that I might have caught something up when I was over there. And so now for the next couple of weeks, when I'm with the girl, I have to wear a face mask, gloves. We've extended the table so that I can keep a metre distance. And if I want something from the fridge, I'll have to either use gloves or ask. And now I have a separate space for my dry food as well.
Ms Hutching-Goff says she's hopeful she will be able to stay in Italy, but is bracing herself for a return home if things get worse.
I know people who actually have to leave anyway because the families have decided to run away to their holiday homes in the countryside and wait for things to blow over. It's kind of wild. So the families that flee, they take their dogs, but they leave the au pairs behind.
Just over 200 New Zealanders are registered with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade as being in Italy. Health Minister David Clark says officials are looking at whether more measures are needed at the New Zealand border for people arriving from all parts of Italy. Clark says doctors are being told to test people who are symptomatic, regardless of whether they've been in any of the COVID-19 hotspots. For Checkpoint, Nita Blakeperson.
CNN's Ben Wiedemann is in Bologna and he says life in the northern Italian city has come to a standstill.
In practical terms, it means that life as Italians have been living is going to radically change. Schools and universities throughout the entire country, this is a country of 60 million people, will be closed at least until the 3rd of April. Public gatherings will be banned. All sporting events, both private and public, banned. Any sort of travel between cities, between provinces, will only be allowed under extenuating circumstances. What we heard from the Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte is that if you can, please just stay at home to try to avoid spreading this virus.
So what about work? Are people allowed to travel to and from work?
That's one thing that people will be allowed to do, is to work, even though the problem is, as a result of the restrictions, as a result of, for instance, the disappearance of tourists, and anybody working in the tourism industry doesn't have much work as it is. In fact, we're staying in a hotel and the CNN crew of 4 is half of the entire occupancy of the hotel. Restaurants, you don't have to make a booking because they're mostly empty. So people can work, but there isn't necessarily much work to be done at the moment in many sectors of the economy.
So what are tourists doing then? Are they supposed to just be locked down in their hotels?
Well, there just aren't many tourists left. We did a story the other day in Milan. We found a handful of tourists from Eastern Europe in the Piazza del Duomo, which is really the prime tourist location in that city. There are none. In this hotel, I think there maybe are 3 tourists. Italy is a lovely country. You don't necessarily have to go to the Colosseum, the Forum, to enjoy its charms, but people can go out. Restaurants, at least until today, are open in the evening. Bars are open. Of course, the new regulations, if they are applied the way they are in those areas where the bans were previously in place, restaurants can only be open until 6 p.m. And, of course, most people in Italy eat around 8 p.m. So, yes, the few tourists left here may not have an awful lot to do in terms of where they go and what they can see, but they can still walk down the lovely streets of Bologna, Firenze, Rome, and other places, but you just can't go in museums and most major tourist sites. With these new restrictions, and I think there is a growing sense among most Italians that you cannot continue to live as normal, that the way people go about their daily business is going to have to change, and if they are going to follow the guidelines set down by Prime Minister Conte, they will be staying at home much longer than they usually do.
So, is there any indication why Italy has been hit so hard by this virus?
Well, that's the question everybody's asking, and no one's come up with a clear answer. Now, Italy has a very large elderly population, and the elderly are the most vulnerable. According to government statistics, the average age of those who have died from coronavirus is just over 80. And therefore, that's one explanation, the very large elderly population. But in terms of sort of the spread and the numbers, nobody has really come up with a really solid explanation as to why it is spread so far and so, in terms of numbers, so many in such a brief period. I can tell you, when I arrived in Italy 15 days ago, the number of cases was 322 and 10 deaths. Today, what we heard from the Civil Protection Agency is that the number of cases, recorded cases in this country is 9,172 and 460 deaths. So these numbers are disturbing and a warning to other countries like the United States that doesn't have a very good national health service like Italy, how they're going to deal with this.
And that's CNN's Ben Wiedemann in Bologna, and apologies for the slightly ropey telephone line there. It is 23 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keen for your feedback. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let us know your thoughts on the coronavirus. Do you know anyone in Italy? Do you have family members there? How are they managing? And should we tighten up our border controls following what Italy has done? As we heard earlier, markets around the world have been shaken by a perfect storm of the coronavirus and an oil shock, and the NZX Top 50 was down around 5% in early trading this morning. Westpac market strategist Imre Speiser joins me now to make sense of how the markets here and abroad are responding. Good evening. How did we fare today off the back of, well, what's been described as a black day on the markets overseas?
Overall, a bit more calm relative to last night. And I'd say last night in the US was probably the height of the panic that we've seen in this pandemic, where we had the US stock market plunging 7.5% and having to be halted at one point because it fell too fast early on. But today, it seems that maybe the market's fatigued by just selling every day. There's no obvious cause behind it, but we've seen markets somewhat stabilise, certainly currency, certainly interest rates. Most of the equity markets in the region, the Australian and most of the Asian bourses, they're small ups for the day. The New Zealand Stock Exchange closed down about 1.6%. Of course, that's a much smaller exchange, and it tends to be dominated by a few individual stocks, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But yeah, overall, a sense of that things are a bit calmer than they were last night.
And Maria, you talk about panic last night. What specifically brought that panic on? Because obviously coronavirus has been around for some time now. Was it the oil shock? Was it the timing of that, the perfect storm?
Not so much. No, the oils are probably a separate case. Sure, the pandemic is impacting oil prices, but there's a separate thing going on there independently, which is the OPEC producers who have had a bit of a fallout and they're not agreeing to cut production. So it seems like there might be a bit of a price war going on in the oil market. Put that to the side, though. Markets in all asset classes, whether they're asset, currency or bond markets, they're all pretty much watching one thing, and that's the number of new cases each day. First, they started watching new cases in China. That rose, then it made a peak and it fell, and the markets thought, okay, that's all over now. Then we saw cases outside China start to rise, and we're still in the upward part of that profile. We haven't reached a peak, obviously. In fact, cases outside of China are still accelerating, and this is what's unnerved China. In addition, the US is going to start testing on a much wider scale than it has, and there is the expectation that we're going to see lots of cases coming out of the US, which is a bit of a worry, and it could have an impact on the US economy as well. So those things really unnerved US markets in particular, but everything else followed suit.
So Donald Trump, on that note, is talking about a business support package and numbers around in the billions. Is that enough to calm the situation?
Well, generally, yes. For this type of thing, a government response is more effective than, say, a central bank response. So central banks can cut rates to as low as they like, and even to negative territory. It'll have much less impact than governments working through the fiscal channels of making sure businesses have money, that employees have enough cash flow to get through. So yeah, these kind of packages are things that are required. So yes, overall, yes, that is along the right track.
So is anyone doing well out of all this volatility?
Yeah, interesting. You could probably pick a few sectors that should be doing well, in fact, that are doing well. We know that from the data. For example, in China, we know that online retail businesses, their businesses have soared since coronavirus. So clearly people socially distancing themselves. They don't want to go to the physical shop, but they're quite happy to do it through the keyboard. So yes, online sales you'd expect would do pretty well, and anybody involved in that channel of retail business. Another one would be health products. It's a broad suite of products, but there'll be some that will do particularly well if they're seen to help address or fend off the virus. And very, very small, I know, but I'm sure toilet paper manufacturers, and there's a few of those in New Zealand, will be doing pretty well also.
Imre, how long can we expect it to be like this in terms of the volatility?
We don't know, and no one knows, and the medical professionals are the best, or the epidemiologists are the best place to answer that question. Markets are really just following suit. They're just following the data as it evolves. They're looking at, as I say, those new cases every day, but they really have no clue on how long it lasts. However, what we do know is that eventually it will fizzle out, and what we know is that the economic damage caused by it will be reflected in a very sharp rebound the other way. So, for example, we've slashed our first quarter economic forecast for New Zealand. We're expecting a 0.8 rise pre-virus. Now we're expecting a GDP fall of 0.2%. So we basically slashed 1% off our first quarter our growth rate. Q2's also been cut a bit, but we're expecting a very sharp rebound in Q3 and Q4. So we're not sure that's going to be a 3 or a 6 month duration of the virus, but however long it is, we will get that rebound when it does fizzle out.
Appreciate you joining us this evening. That's Westpac market strategist Imre Speiser joining us this evening. Now, a Samoan chief on trial for slavery says he brought 5 of the complainants to New Zealand to perform at his mother's birthday party, but they ran away and became overstayers. Joseph Unga Matamata denies 11 charges of trafficking and 13 charges of slavery over a 26-year period. His trial is now in its 5th week in the High Court in Napier, and today, under cross-examination by the Crown, he continued to deny any wrongdoing. Anusha Bradley was there and filed this report.
Mr Matamata paid for the return flights, 3-month visitor visas and passports of 5 men who arrived in July 2003. All 5 have told the court they came to New Zealand to work. Under cross-examination by Crown Prosecutor Clayton Walker, Mr Matamata denied it was the case.
You were quite happy to spend this money because they were going to earn an awful lot more for you. That's why you brought them over.
No, sir, no. I disagree there.
Mr Matamata said the men came to perform for his mother's 80th birthday party.
Now just remind us, what was the purpose of these 5 people coming to New Zealand at that time?
To celebrate my mother's 80 years old in New Zealand. And they came as a group, make some item for her, dancing. Yeah. And come to New Zealand to have a look what's the New Zealanders look like, what's life here is all about, and then go back home.
But the men did not go home. Many either ran away or became overstayers. Mr Matamata said, despite being their chief, he had no control over that.
That's true. That's my job to remind and encourage them. It's the time for you to leave. But if they don't want to go, what can I do? When they run away, what can I do? I can't force them.
When asked by the Crown why the men's visas expired a month before his mother's birthday, Mr Matamata said they held the celebrations early because of that. But he appeared confused about how old his mother was turning.
Do you see actually she turned 86 that year, not 80?
I beg your pardon?
Do you see that she actually turned 86 that year, not 80?
Oh, well, I just go what she told me.
He denied ever beating the men or having strict rules in his house.
There's no rule. That's their own way of talking, rules. I got no rules in my house. Everybody's the same. Everybody's do what they want to do. Go out, go to the shop, anywhere. I don't stop them.
Mr Matamata's Hastings house was raided by the police and Immigration New Zealand on the 8th of August 2017, 6 months after one of his workers complained about his treatment. In the days after the raid, the police intercepted Mr Matamata's phone calls. The Crown asked him about one phone call he made to a woman, which was translated into English by a registered translator and double-checked by another.
You said to her, these guys have told everything about we did, everything that we did that enabled them to come to New Zealand. Why did you say we?
Well, it's English. I don't think English is similar to how we speak in Samoa, do we? We speak Samoa on the phone, not in English. So I don't know if this typical is right.
Mr Matamata said all the 13 complainants were lying because they wanted visas to stay or live in New Zealand. The defence will call its second witness tomorrow. In Napier for Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
Up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, Bowden Barrett debuts for the Blues. A Southland man who stole 2 police-issued guns and a police car is sentenced to 3 years in prison. And Meghan and Harry go out in style at their final engagement as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Do get in touch about anything you've heard on the program this evening. You can text us 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. And there's always email. The address for that is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. And Susanna is standing by with the headlines.
The Reserve Bank says it's looking at unconventional tactics it could use, if necessary, to control economic fallout, such as from the coronavirus. The central bank's outlined measures including negative interest rates, special bank loans and buying government bonds, which might be used to stimulate the economy when normal policy is ineffective. The New Zealand share market has clawed back much of its losses and closed down 194 points, or about 1.7%, after plunging close to 5% at the open. It comes as global markets have experienced their worst day since the financial crash of 2008 due to the impacts of COVID-19 and a dip in oil prices. A Southland man who stole 2 police-issued pistols and a patrol car has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. Hori Gemmell was arrested near Gore in August last year after more than 30 hours on the run. A charity that stopped operating 5 years ago has continued to pay its board members tens of thousands of dollars each year. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says the Quit Group should give money back and shut down if it does not plan to fulfil its social obligation. The mother of a 2-year-old girl who the Crown says was killed by her father has told a jury she has been concerned about his mental health prior to her daughter's death. 34-year-old electrician Tewi Savage is on trial in the High Court in Hamilton for the murder of Arnica Savage, who drowned in the Rangitaiki River in 2018. A Samoan chief on trial for slavery has questioned the translation of an intercepted phone call where he admits wrongdoing. Hastings resident Joseph Matamata is charged with trafficking and treating 13 Samoans as slaves between 1994 and 2017. Greens co-leader James Shaw fought back tears as he paid tribute to the late Jeanette Fitzsimons in Parliament this afternoon. The former Greens co-leader died suddenly last week, aged 75. Those are the latest news headlines from RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. If you're just tuning in, this is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. And time now to go to our business news with Nona Peltier. Another really busy day, Nona. But shall we start?
Right, there definitely was a busy day.
Got a lot of paper here in the studio this evening. So let's start with the winners from the financial markets today, because it was a bit of a topsy-turvy today, but there were some winners who came out of it.
Yeah, there was. We could call it a Black Monday, but for the markets in the United States and of course in Europe, but look, let's just put a little sugar coating on it. It wasn't all bad for everyone. And some of the winners were, for example, AFT Pharmaceuticals. Yes, they are making products like Maxigesic, which is a pain relief, and other products. And they've been selling like hotcakes, probably just alongside those toilet paper rolls, no doubt. So people are buying those things in advance of whatever might come. Yes. Yeah, let's say. So they said that they sold as much vitamin C lipo sachets, I think that's how you would say it, or sachets, I'm not sure, as it had done in the entire year, $1.2 million worth.
So that's interesting, because
in 3 days.
People are obviously concerned about maintaining generally good health at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So people are, buying up things that are going to make them feel better one way or another. And certainly they benefited in their market. Their prices went up nearly 3% today. So they were higher than that earlier on. A pretty good uptick for that company. But they weren't the only ones. We had a statement from the U.S. President Donald Trump this afternoon where he indicated there would be a package to support businesses and so on. And Tourism Holdings, which has exposure in the U.S. market.
So this is the campervan company, right?
That's the campervan company. And it was up 2% after that. And so that's pretty positive for them. Synlait Milk on our trade data, which showed that dairy sales, products to China had been holding steady in terms of not necessarily volume, but in prices. And it rose more than 1% on that news. So it got a bit of an uptick there. And what about for the consumer? Z Energy announced this morning that it was going to cut petrol prices. So that's another upside. Yes, there's plenty of downside, but there's always a little bit on the other side for consumers and investors to take heart from.
And today also we heard from the Reserve Bank Governor Adrian Orr. So what has he told people to expect from the Reserve Bank in these times?
Expect nothing, really, is what his message was. He's saying that there's no need for a knee-jerk reaction to what's happening. He says that the country was in a good space. And so what he talked about today were theoretical monetary policies, alternative instruments they could use to encourage or to, stimulate growth in the economy. Because, let's be realistic. There is definitely doom and gloom out there. We saw, so much data come through that suggested that trade was down in the last month in China. imports and exports, both sides. And yeah, so tempering that, he's still saying, though, that our economy isn't tanking. It's still, moving along.
So made it very clear that he's got no intention to move any decisions about the official cash rate
forward. Not at this time. And, he's going to have a monetary policy statement later this month, and the market is expecting him to cut interest rates. But he wasn't going to be doing anything today, and he'd signaled that earlier. And there was some speculation that he would, perhaps the pressure that he's seeing, he might have changed his tune, but he didn't. And interestingly, we also had some other data this morning, which is a thing called the truckometer. And
explain to us what that is again.
Yeah, okay, so it's two indices. One of them is the heavy traffic index, which tells us what's happening today on the roads, like trucks moving cargo and so on. And then there's the light traffic indicator, which is about people driving their car around, shopping and so on. And those numbers showed us that we were up on the year earlier. And the chief economist at ANZ said that the numbers were pretty positive because they really were quite typical for this time of year. But she says all bets are off. So Sharon Zollner says we don't really know what tomorrow is going to bring with the COVID-19 virus. But at the moment, things look pretty good.
So people, based on that survey, are not staying at home. They're still moving around in their vehicles.
But this afternoon, when I spoke with her again about the business confidence survey, which was pretty down, she said that there was an indication there that more people are staying home. So, but I don't know about you, Lisa, but I'm definitely going to be going out after this.
And still coming to work.
That's
we can see Nona. Also, so we know it was a bit of a rough start on the markets today. Where did we finish? Where was the dollar at?
Okay, so yesterday, as you know, we were about 3% down. Today, we're 1.8% down. That's a lot better than what we saw in overseas markets overnight, which got clobbered, really. The Australian ASX 200, yesterday, remember we talked yesterday about how at that point it was about 6% down. It finished down 7.33%. That's a shocking closure. Today, it was up 0.9%, so it bounced back a little bit. So we finished down 1.8%, 194 points down to 10,897. And the dollar is steady still, trading at 62.3 US cents, 96.1 Australian, and 48.4 British pence.
Thanks, Nona. Another busy day on the business front there. Spend the money on smoke-free services or give the money back and shut down. That's the blunt message from the Prime Minister to the board members of the Quit Group Trust, who have been paying themselves tens of thousands of dollars a year from a charity that ceased to exist 5 years ago. The Ministry of Health has no power to recoup the money given to the charity. That's no longer operating, but Jacinda Ardern says that's beside the point. Our political reporter Joe Moyer has this story.
The Quit Group, the charity originally commissioned to run Quitline, created a trust under the same name in 2015, which has been hoarding more than $3 million in reserves. More than $400,000 of that is from the Ministry of Health. But when the ministry audited the trust in 2017, it never gave a deadline of when the funding needed to be reinvested by. In the meantime, the Trust's 4 board members have been collecting $18,000 a year each. The Prime Minister says enough is enough.
I see this as quite a simple matter, that although this charity no longer is contracted to the Ministry of Health, they still have a social obligation. That money is meant to help people quit, so either spend it on that or give it back.
The ministry no longer has a contractual agreement with the charity, which Associate Health Minister Jenny Salesa says makes it legally difficult to order the trust to do anything. Ms Ardern says that's irrelevant.
For me, that is neither here nor there. They have a social obligation. That was to help people quit smoking. If they're not going to spend it on that, give it back and shut down.
Ms Salesa says the ministry is putting pressure on the trust and she expects the money to be reinvested in the next few weeks.
The Ministry of Health is basically trying to get the trust to do the right thing. That funding actually was supposed to go to help people quit smoking. That's what the money should be invested in.
While no staff work for the trust, it continues to gain investment income and has paid out just over $700,000 since 2016. The Quit Group's 4 board members are Chris Cunningham, Janet Pearson, Mary McCulloch and Annette Milligan. Mr Cunningham recently stood down as chair of the Hepatitis Foundation after RNZ revealed he had spent $128,000 on overseas travel, on top of lavish dinners at expensive Auckland restaurants. Ms Salesa says the board members are under scrutiny too.
Absolutely, it's unacceptable that this should happen. And in terms of who should be on boards and who should be on NGO boards like this is something no doubt we would look at.
According to the Trust's latest financial statements, it still has about $2.7 million in reserves. The Minister is seeking advice on whether that can also be recouped. National spokesperson for charities, Alfred Naro, says what the Quick Group Trust has been doing is unacceptable.
What Quick Group was about was actually fulfilling a vision that was set out by Tariana Turia and a number of others that said by 2025 we would be smoke-free. So Quick Group had a responsibility and a role in which they would play in engaging in a number of different programs. Now, if they haven't fulfilled that, then that's wrong.
He says the ministry and its minister simply saying it's trying to recoup the money is not good enough. And Mr Naro says there's a big red flag around Mr Cunningham's name and his involvement in charities.
For him, over 5 years, to still receiving $18,000 of taxpayer funds for work he did not complete or did not do, where's the conscience of this man? That's what I ask.
Mr Naro says the Prime Minister has taken a strong position and Minister Salesa needs to follow through on it and recover the funds. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Joe Moyer.
There's been an emotional start to the MH17 trial in the Netherlands as the names of the 298 passengers and crew who died were read out in court. The 4 defendants who have been charged with murder were not present, but one did have legal representation and through his lawyers denied any involvement in the downing of the Boeing 777. The ABC's Samantha Hawley reports.
Angelina Premila Rajendran. Liam Patrick Davison.
One by one, the
Francesca
names of the passengers and crew were read.
Nicole Charles Anderson Norris.
298 in total. Serge and Vera Orishkin lost their son Victor and were in the courtroom for the first day of the hearing.
That brings the day that I heard it on the phone, brings the memories back 5.5 years ago when I received that morning phone call at work.
It's very, very heavy. It's very upsetting. However, we are glad to hear our son's name to be remembered.
He's not forgotten.
AFP Commander Jennifer Hurst was also in the courtroom.
Incredibly moving. You could have almost heard a pin drop in that room. And I think what was really significant, particularly for us, was the amount of time that it took to read the names out. And that gives a real indication about the significance and the absolute atrocity that happened on that day.
In the court, as expected, the accused were missing, despite all efforts to bring them to the Netherlands. 3 judges will sit on the bench, including Justice Hendrik Steinhuis.
At this moment, the court would like to point out that it realises that the impact, that the loss of so many human lives and the manner in which they were so abruptly ended is barely conceivable.
Only one of the accused, Russian Oleg Politov, has legal representation in the court. He denies any involvement. The court heard the accused allegedly transferred the missile launcher from Russia to Ukraine on the night of the 16th of July 2014 and returned it to Russian soil shortly after the Malaysia Airlines plane was shot from the sky. And there was this chilling evidence from prosecutor Ward Fernandez.
They had conversations afterwards as to whether the book had done its job, and they noted with delight that an aircraft had been shot down.
Vera Orishkin again.
Well, we're here basically to be a voice for our son. So we are just taking it in, and it seems like it's quite draining.
The defence lawyers argued that MH17 shouldn't have been flying in the airspace above eastern Ukraine. But the prosecutors say whether or not Ukraine should have closed its airspace is not a matter for the court.
Samantha Hawley reporting there. It is 12 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The mother of a 2-year-old girl who the Crown says was killed by her father has told a jury she had been worried about his mental health prior to her daughter's death. 34-year-old electrician Tiwi Savage is on trial in the High Court in Hamilton for the murder of Annika Savage in July 2018. The Crown alleges he drowned her in the Rangataiki River, and our reporter Andrew McRae has been at the trial.
Tiwi Savage went for a walk with his daughter down to the river to calm down after a heated argument with his ex-partner. Their relationship had ended 3 months earlier, and it was only days after she told him she was seeing someone else. Santana Moses says in the days leading up to the death, she was concerned about his behaviour.
He said that Jesus told him to tell them that their mother loves them.
Did we say anything else to you at that point?
He was telling me not to worry because he could see the worry in my face.
Did you respond to him telling you not to worry?
Yes. I said I worry about your mental health because you have to care about children.
Santana Moses says Tiwi Savage told her he was seeking God's love. She says his mother believed there was a war going on between God and the devil for her son's soul.
I vaguely remember her saying that they had to perform something that was like an exorcism.
The Crown says after the accused hadn't returned from his walk with the little girl, he was found by family members crying and saying he had messed up and had drowned his daughter. He was found naked in blackberry bushes. Later, when talking to police, he couldn't remember what had actually happened, but claimed he hadn't held her under or drowned her. Prosecutor Richard Jensen says causing a child to drown was a failure to provide the necessaries of life and was a departure from the standard of care expected.
Really, what the Crown says is that the defendant was consumed by anger, jealousy and despair, and that when he entered the water, he intended to kill himself, and crucially for your determination, ladies and gentlemen, he intended to cause Annika's death.
He says a legally blameworthy act that causes a death is a culpable homicide.
What else can your intent be in taking a 2-year-old into a freezing river, holding them under and or letting them float away?
Defence lawyer Shane Tate told the jury that his client doesn't accept responsibility for his daughter's death. He says Tiwi Savage wasn't thinking like a reasonable person at the time.
And upon examination by the doctors, he was found to be insane or have some issues in relation to mental culpability. He did not hold her under the water, and he did not allow her to float away.
Shane Tate told the jury to take heed of the evidence from specialist doctors during the trial. It's set down to last about 2 weeks. In Hamilton, Ko Andrew McRae-Tene.
A Southland man who stole 2 police-issued pistols and a patrol car, triggering a manhunt, has been sentenced to more than 3 years in prison. Hori Gemel was arrested in Te Te Puia, near Gore, in August. This afternoon, the 24-year-old was sentenced in Invercargill District Court on a raft of charges. Tess Brunton was in court and filed this report.
Hori Gemel was already on the police's radar when he drove past a patrol car close to midnight on August the 14th. He evaded attempts to pull him over, mounting the curb before putting it in reverse and ramming the patrol car. Invercargill District Court Judge Bernadette Farnan told the courtroom the force of the collision caused the patrol car's bonnet to buckle. Gamel then fled on foot before doubling back and jumping into the police car, locking the doors behind him.
When you refused to get out of the police car, one of the officers smashed the window while the other attempted unsuccessfully to taser you. You drove away at speed in the police car with the lights flashing. The officers had to step back to avoid being hit. Another police car saw you and followed you. The chasing car stopped 2 or 3 metres from you, angled in front of where you were. You accelerated aggressively at that police car, ramming it into the driver's door side and shunting the vehicle. The officer accelerated away, fearing that he would be hit again.
He drove off in the patrol car before unlocking the vehicle's gun safe, taking 2 police-issued Glock pistols and fleeing on foot. They were each loaded with 17 rounds of ammunition. More than 50 police officers joined the manhunt that ended with his arrest and the recovery of one pistol about 36 hours later. The other pistol and 7 rounds of ammunition remained at large for months. Judge Farnan says Gamble offered an explanation for his actions.
In explanation for your offending, you stated that you did not appreciate the way the police had spoken to you when you were stopped, so you decided to run. And when you returned to your own vehicle to leave, you took the police car instead, as your vehicle required a jump start to start it operating.
Hori Gamble previously pleaded guilty to 2 charges of unlawfully possessing the police pistols and 2 charges for stealing the Glocks from the patrol car, as well as a charge each for stealing the patrol car, unlawfully possessing ammunition, reckless driving and breaching his release conditions. Judge Farnan says her sentencing took into account Gamble's mental history, his life experiences, his previous convictions and his guilty plea. The final sentence was for 3 years and 1 month imprisonment.
In respect of the unlawfully taking the motor vehicle and 2 charges of theft ex-car, you were sentenced to 3 years and 1 month imprisonment. In respect of the unlawful possession of the pistols, on those 2 charges you were sentenced to 18 months imprisonment. In respect of the reckless driving charge, you were sentenced to 2 months imprisonment.
Judge Farnan says Hori Gamble will need to pay $2,000 in reparation as the patrol car was extensively damaged. He will also be disqualified for driving for more than 2 years once he gets out of prison. In Invercargill for Checkpoint, Cortez Brunton, TNA.
The good news keeps coming for the Blues Super Rugby team, riding high after a drought-breaking victory over the Hurricanes in Wellington. The Auckland-based side have officially welcomed their marquee recruit. Now, a former Hurricanes first 5 All Black star, Beauden Barrett, has joined the Blues squad, a return that's arrived slightly earlier than expected. Clay Wilson with more on Barrett's eagerness to end his holiday and hit the training paddock with his new team.
Forget post-holiday blues. Beauden Barrett couldn't be happier to be back in his rugby boots. Refreshed after an extended post-Rugby World Cup break, the All Black star is training with his new Super Rugby side for the first time this week. And as much as he relished his time off, Barrett says there was a clear moment when his mindset shifted.
Yeah, it was a really good break until Super Rugby kicked off in round 1. And then my feet started to get itchy.
A feeling only intensified by the Blues' impressive start to the season. Wins, though, haven't halted criticism of Barrett living it up overseas during the early rounds of the competition. But he insists any negative reaction has had no impact on him.
How they see it, it's up to them, but I've really enjoyed it. It's been really beneficial to me and my family, and I'm grateful for it too. It's a unique opportunity that I feel that I worked hard for, and hopefully I'll benefit from in the coming years.
Leon McDonald certainly isn't holding anything against his big-name recruit. The Blues coach has enjoyed watching Barrett tick off some bucket list items and says they're not in a rush when it comes to his return.
You can't just jump straight into it without being physically ready. We want to set it Bodie up to succeed, so when he plays he's ready to go, not just chuck him in there and hope he's going to be okay. So there's a lot of boxes to tick, and we're aiming mid-April. Right now is a wide bullseye, but we'll hone on that as he starts getting into his work.
Fitness isn't the only obstacle. New Zealand Māori first 5 or Teddy Black has been a key figure in the Blues' good form, although McDonald says Barrett is likely to end up in his preferred position.
Ultimately we've selected Bodie as a 10 in the squad, obviously, or he's here as a 10. That's where his desire lies, I think. So at the moment obviously that's where we see him, but rugby's a funny old game and who knows where we end up.
Getting the start at first 5 should be less of an issue in Barrett's first post-holiday hit-out. The 2-time World Player of the Year is set to turn out for Taranaki Club Coastal early next month. Barrett says, assuming his brother and Coastal coach Kane picks him, he will relish the rare opportunity.
Yeah, it's been 10 years, so it's a club that I dearly love and it's where it all began, so I think it's really important to connect with your club as much as possible and to run around, and I'll be playing with my brother Blake too, which will be pretty fun.
After that, a Blues debut awaits. All signs point to an April 11 clash with the Hurricanes, and Barrett says that's just fine with him.
Oh, that'd be the dream, wouldn't it? It's it wouldn't be a bad way to start.
Mō te hotaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Clay Wilson aho.
And time for your feedback now before the 6 o'clock news. David Crawford has got in contact from North Carolina in the US. Thanks for listening, David. He says, he can vouch for the fact that the stock market over there has taken a major hit. He says Apple stock dropped from $328 to $266 a share. But he says he's been reassured the markets will recover in due time, but expect some more volatile happenings in the future, he said. Vanessa has also got in touch. This is about the travel ban and restrictions in Italy. Vanessa says, I was off to Italy at Easter to show my 17-year-old daughter the sights before she goes off to university. Typical Kiwi attitude, thought we'd be right. After hearing your young travellers, my heart sank for them and us. But keeping it in perspective, though, as so many poor people have lost their loved ones due to this hideous virus. Thanks for getting in touch, Vanessa. After 6 o'clock, we have a special 1-hour documentary that follows a survivor from the mosque massacres.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Leatawa tēnei. The Reserve Bank says it's looking at a range of unconventional tactics it could use if necessary to control economic fallout such as the coronavirus. In a speech, the Governor Adrian Orr has outlined a toolkit of measures that might be used if the usual mechanism of changing the official cash rate is proving ineffective. The central bank uses the official cash rate as its main tool to keep inflation in check and maximise employment. But Mr Orr says it's been working on alternatives such as cutting interest rates below zero, lending banks money with conditions and buying government bonds should it be confronted by a shock. The cash rate is currently at a record low of 1%, but is expected to be cut to counter the impact of the COVID-19 virus on the economy at its next review in 2 weeks. A financial advisor says most people with KiwiSaver funds will be out of pocket due to the recent market upheavals. It comes after global stock markets plunged due to the impacts of COVID-19 and a dip in oil prices. Financial advisor Martin Hawes says unhappy KiwiSaver investors should wait until things cool off and then invest in less risky schemes. But he says it's not all bad news.
This whole downturn presents an opportunity for KiwiSaver funds because when this shakes out, it'll actually be really good for equities. We'll be left with very low interest rates. The world will continue on a growth trajectory. It's not Armageddon.
Financial advisor Martin Hawes. The share market has clawed back much of its losses today and closed down 194 points, or about 1.7%, after plunging close to 5% at the open. The NZX Top 50 index rose through the day on improved sentiment after initial panic selling. A promise by the United States President Donald Trump to develop an aid package for businesses gave Asian markets a confidence boost, with the Australian market bouncing back from yesterday's more than 7% fall. That sentiment offset some negative New Zealand economic data showing business confidence is down, matched by some weak retail and trade figures. The New Zealand dollar was little changed. The mother of a 2-year-old girl, who the Crown says was killed by her father, has told a jury she had been worried about his mental health prior to her daughter's death. 34-year-old electrician Tiwi Savage is on trial in the High Court in Hamilton for the murder of Annika Savage in 2018. She drowned in the Rangitaiki River. The accused went for a walk with his daughter to calm down after an argument with his ex-partner. Santana Moses says in the days leading up to the death that she was concerned about his behaviour.
I said I worry about your mental health because you have to care about children.
Santana Moses says Tiwi Savage told her he was seeking God's love and his mother believed there was a war going on between God and the devil for his soul. A Southland man who stole 2 Glock police pistols and a patrol car was in breach of his prison release conditions when he was arrested. Hori Gemmell has been sentenced in Invercargill District Court today for more than 3 years in prison. The 24-year-old was arrested near Gore in August last year after more than 30 hours on the run. The National Party has serious concerns around board members who have been collecting tens of thousands of dollars a year from a charity that ceased to exist 5 years ago. The Quit Group, the charity commissioned to run Quitline, has been hoarding more than $3 million in reserves. One of its board members, Chris Cunningham, recently stood down as chair of the Hepatitis Foundation after RNZ revealed he had spent $128,000 on overseas travel. Nationals Charities spokesperson Alfred Ngaro says that rings alarm bells.
For him, over 5 years, to still receiving $18,000 of taxpayer funds for work he did not complete or did not do, where's the conscience of this man? That's what I ask.
Nationals Alfred Ngaro. It's 4 minutes past 6. The Warriors Rugby League side have named captain Roger Tuivasa-Sheck to start in the NRL season opener. Despite a minor ankle injury, the Kiwis fullback has been announced to take the number 1 jersey for Saturday night's match against the Knights in Newcastle. The major surprise in the Warriors lineup is the selection of Chanel Harris-Tavita ahead of Cody Nikorima to start alongside Blake Green in the halves. Front rower Jermaine Tonor-Brown and second rower Eliezer Katoa are poised to make their NRL debuts off the bench. High Performance New Zealand says sports need to work together if the country is to win Olympic medals in the future. It surveyed more than 600 emerging elite athletes over the last 7 years, with results showing athletes who played multiple sports until their mid-teens still go on to win medals in their chosen sport. Athlete Development Manager Ken Lynch says sports also need to work in the best interests of the athletes.
If we're a little more collegial and a little bit more collaborative and think more about the athlete, the participant at the centre of it, and the impact that it has on them, whether it be stress, pressure, mental stress or pressure, or physical loading, if we kept that at the heart of it, I think that we'd be a lot further along the line.
Ken Lynch. And the Black Sticks have pulled out of upcoming Pro League matches in the Netherlands and Germany because of concerns over the coronavirus. That's the news.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
To help retain kind of cash flow for businesses, because that's really the important and critical point here. That's what all of their interventions are really looking at.
Lately with me, Karen Hay, is your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
There's going to be a cash handout to all permanent residents in Hong Kong, the equivalent of about 2,000 New Zealand dollars.
Up to date if you're up late. Lately with Karen Hay every weeknight from 10 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Manawatu, including Coromandel Peninsula, Taumaranui and Taihape. Fine spells and a few showers clearing from the south tomorrow. Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. Fine today apart from isolated showers in Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Scattered showers tomorrow afternoon and evening, some possibly heavy. Horowhenua, Kapiti Coast, Wellington and Wairarapa. A few showers developing with a southerly change, then clearing tomorrow. Nelson and Bulla, fine spells and scattered showers. Marlborough and Canterbury, showers, some heavy and possibly thundery, clearing in Marlborough tonight and Canterbury tomorrow. For Westland and Fiordland, fine apart from isolated showers about southern Fiordland, clearing tomorrow. Otago and Southland, rain easing to isolated showers, then becoming fine tomorrow morning. Chatham Islands, periods of rain. RNZ National, it's 7 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna, and hello again. This is Checkpoint, and I'm Lisa Owen. In a moment, a documentary following a survivor of last year's mosque attacks. But first, if you're just joining us, Italy's gone into lockdown mode as it attempts to halt the spread of COVID-19. The government today extended its coronavirus quarantine measures to the entire country, meaning 60 million people will only be able to travel for work or medical reasons. There is a ban on all public gatherings. Schools and universities are shut, and the government has ordered cinemas, theatres and museums to close. Shops and restaurants have been instructed to make sure patrons remain at least a metre apart. Italy is the worst affected country to be hit by coronavirus outside of China, with hundreds killed by the illness in the 2.5 weeks since it was first discovered there. The outbreak only came to light in Italy near Milan on February 21st. Now there are more than 9,000 cases across the country and 463 people are dead. Just over 200 New Zealanders are registered with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade as being in Italy. Health Minister David Clark says officials are looking at whether more measures are needed at the New Zealand border for people arriving from all parts of Italy. And Dr. Clark says doctors are being told to test people who are symptomatic, regardless of whether they have been in any of the COVID-19 hotspots. Please don't hate us. That's the message from one of the survivors of the Christchurch mosque shootings. Temel Atatuju was in the Al Noor Mosque at the time of the attacks and made eye contact with the gunmen as they began shooting. The first bullet should have killed him, but it didn't, nor did the 8 others that also hit him. Instead, he has spent the last year in surgery, rehab, physiotherapy and counselling. Our reporter Logan Church has been with him every step of the way, documenting Temel's recovery, his struggles and his victories. This is his story.
It's 1:40 Friday afternoon, March 15. New Zealand changed. And amongst the smoke, the terror and the flying hate-filled bullets was Temel Atatuju. We have been with Temel over the past year as he not only regains control over his body, but also of his mind. This is his story.
I have 9 bullets in my body. I have injuries on my face and my arm, and then right knee, and then my left legs from back cast, and then all around between my hips.
We first interviewed Temel at Burwood Hospital in early April, in a small room on the 3rd floor. His sister Şengün had arrived from Turkey, and he was trying to piece together the last few weeks. Temel's body was partially covered by bandages, the left-hand side of his face stitched up. That was bullet number 1.
The first shot is come my face, because when I heard the sounds outside, few shotguns sounds coming, bang, bang, everybody stop. Try to understand what's going on. And when me too, of course, when I look at, I see the gunman in targeting, and then I see when his smoke coming out from gun, because I've been in army and I know that he's targeted, and I see the eyes to him, so I understand he targeting me.
Temel was rushed to hospital fighting for his life. Once stable, he was put in an isolated room. He needed to rest, but the loud bangs and thuds and shouts he could hear in the hospital were just too traumatic, too much like the sounds inside Al Noor Mosque on March 15. But Temel's words weren't filled with hate back at the gunman. Instead, they were filled with hope.
I can see already my future's bright, and I'm more different than before because I'm reborn, as I told you, and I don't know how many days passed, but my new birthday, 15th of March, so 2019.
That hope will be severely tested in the months to come, as Temel has to start relearning how to live. The first challenge, though, was how to walk, which he was slowly getting better at up and down the corridors of Burwood Hospital.
This terrorist sought to tear our nation apart with an evil ideology that has torn the world apart. But instead, we have shown that New Zealand is unbreakable.
Temel committed early on to regularly returning to the Al Noor Mosque, but it isn't easy. He was, however, keen to meet Prince William, who visited the mosque a few weeks later in late April.
Tragedy unfolded in this room. A terrorist attempted to sow division and hatred in a place that stands for togetherness and selflessness. He thought he could redefine what this space was. I'm here to help you show the world that he failed.
And Temel got to meet the prince personally.
Yeah, he's very warmly handshakes and talking with me and listening my story and looking my worm. So I don't want to show you guys at the moment, but of course, he did very friendly, very calm and friendly talk with me inside also too, and then we had some photos taken.
But coming back here was painful, both physically and mentally.
This is my second time, but every time when I come to ask, I need to take some pill to get myself calm down because I'm quite nervous to come here. But every time when I come here, this is easier. So I'm happy to come to here every week. Slowly, that's going to become down, and I'm going to go counseling after here to talking about my stress. And sometimes it's quite painful, my arms too, so I have to keep chasing my prescription medicine to make my life is easier, so less pain.
Emotions overflowed outside the Christchurch courthouse today as the families of those who died in the mosques emerged. The man accused of murdering their loved ones had just denied everything.
Very upset from the court. Why he said I'm not guilty? Why? When I came here, it's totally heartbroken because I lost the people. I lost our friend.
As the hospital visits continue and the pain doesn't let up, Tamel, however, has never missed a court appearance for the alleged gunman Brenton Tarrant. He was among other victims as a not guilty plea was entered on June the 14th. With one arm in a sling, the other grasping a crutch, Tamel told dozens of waiting journalists outside it didn't come as a shock.
Not surprised what he said, he is not guilty or whatever he said, and we are strong. On the end, we are the winner.
Despite the regular surgeries, the constant pain, Tamel swallows his painkillers and comes to every appearance. He wants to show the man accused of his shooting that he isn't scared. Wounded, yes, but definitely not scared. But something is scaring him: money. Tamel is co-owner of Ottoman Kebabs, a small kebab shop in the Hoyt NTX complex in central Christchurch. Tamel was working long hours before March 15 to keep the young business afloat and growing.
Business owners, especially small business owners, has to work hard to be successful. So otherwise, it can be bankrupt and shut. So that's why me and my friend Qasim is work too many hours. Okay, we do 50 hours, sometimes 60 hours a week.
But in May, he tells us that since the shooting, his business partner has had to work even harder, and they have had to employ extra staff.
The problem is we have to supply 2 more people, and then we have to do all profits going to staff now to run that business successful.
So you're not earning any money from your business at the moment because you can't?
Of course, because when you have more staff, more you pay week wage, and more the taxes and more PAYE, everything's added on. So you just take your profits away.
Even though the terrible scarring on his body was starting to heal over, he couldn't go back to work anytime soon. Tamel was earning no money from his business and was reliant on ACC. Do you have enough money to get by at the moment?
At the moment, also I get the money from the ACC, just. But if it's to be not donated, added on, it's going to be finished, and then I can't survive without the donation.
Those donations were coming from Victim Support, who were collecting millions of dollars for victims. By the 7th of May 2019, Tamel had received just $13,000 from Victim Support. But at that point, it was not clear how the rest of the donated money would be distributed. And in an interview with Checkpoint, the Victim Support Chief Executive Kevin So could not answer basic questions about this.
This interview is actually being conducted so that we can be absolutely open with the public, that all monies will be distributed to the victims, and that will happen over the next few weeks, and that the plan has been set out in our public statements, and we will stick to that.
Okay.
We just simply want to give reassurance that all monies will be 100% distributed to the victims.
In the interests of that absolute openness, I'm going to give you another crack at this. First question, did the PR company give you some lines and messages for you to stick to today, Kevin? Yes or no? Would you like to try and answer that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
So meetings with victims were organised. Tamal went along to one such meeting at Hagley Pavilion.
A little bit I'm confused for last payment, but I'm appreciated everybody's. Still I'm thankful for New Zealand peoples and all around the peoples who donate for victims for the 15th of March. I want to believe this is fair and then separated even between the peoples.
Tamal would get enough money to live on, but for his business, some tough decisions lay ahead. It's been about 6 months since March 15 and Tamal is back in hospital, this time meeting his physiotherapist Helen. He sees her on a weekly basis. But this time is special. More of his family were visiting from Turkey. His mum Fatma and nephew Emirhan, and Shengun, his sister, is still here. Today Helen is stretching Tamal's scarred muscles. It's painful, but it is getting easier.
And so we're stretching, but we have to be careful not to stretch too hard, don't we? Because of the, they're still healing.
I showed X-ray to the Emirhan, so he is understand.
It's important that Emirhan in particular is here. He and Tamal are heading off soon for the Hajj, a pilgrimage to Mecca. And someone is going to have to help Tamal with these exercises. So Tamal translates Helen's instructions into Turkish.
So we're just basically stretching everything here, aren't we?
Gerdiriyoruz yani şu anda yaptığımız gerdirme diyor.
But without too much force and it shouldn't be painful.
Çok güç harcamadan yapıyoruz bunu, önemli. Zarar vermeden.
X-rays show the extent of Tamal's injuries, showing little bits of broken bullets stuck in his arm. Many of those fragments are too small to remove. The risk of damaging the muscle, too great.
Before I can do on like this.
Couldn't get to your mouth, could you?
And how far can you get now?
I can come to my neck, my ears.
So to start with, you couldn't get to.
Look, I can do without push now, but I used to be like that around here. And then during the time coming up. Now I can, of course, after surgery too, it's helped lots too. So I can touch my ears.
As part of the exercises today, Helen puts Tamal in a machine that continuously stretches and relaxes his most damaged arm.
You're just working on elbow movement instead of a continuous passive motion. Continuous passive motion. So it moves the elbow. I mean, you can just alter the amount of bending or straightening that you go to. So mostly we've been using it for straightening because Tamal's got pretty good bend. And we just wanted to get, and so you just sit there and it just stretches you out gently.
Does it go backwards and forwards a little bit?
Yes, it can go backwards. You can have it bending up to 120 or something, doesn't it? So you just alter it depending on these little cogs.
But as you can see, I'm a robot, full of metals on my body.
You can stop at any time.
It looks like something out of one of those horror movies, doesn't it?
No, it's a very useful machine. So he can alter it himself to what he wants to go. It just gets a small stretch.
It's not comfortable, but talking is a good distraction. So we start chatting about one of Tamal's secret passions, football. He used to play for the Hallsville Masters team.
I played Hallsville team, but we are Division 3. But of course, you feel getting older, so it's too young, And then I tried to join to the 35 plus master team, but had the injury. And then, of course, 2 years it took me to come back again with that injury, and then this has happened to me.
Tamal is desperate to play again, but until he can, he needs to rest. And having his family here will help immeasurably.
Feel lonely sometimes, and we're all happy now to be together again.
It's now August, and Tamal is packing his bags. The Saudi king is paying for the victims of the mosque attacks to be flown to Mecca for the Hajj. It's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. All Muslims must do this trip at least once. This is Tamal's first time. His nephew Emirhan is coming too.
I'm preparing my luggage here, so it's just quite exciting for me. And my mom's helping me and supervising me get ready myself to go, because she's been a few times in Mecca and one time in the pilgrimage. Thank you for Saudi Arabia King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud. So this is a great opportunity for us to go. This is one at a lifetime to have to be completed for Muslim people.
Non-Muslims can't enter Mecca, so Tamal filmed the entire experience on his cell phone for us. But to get there, it's a very long flight. Christchurch to Auckland, Auckland to Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah, and then a final bus ride to Mecca.
We are going now, our bus, from Jeddah to Mecca, or another journey start now.
But they eventually arrive.
Here we go. It's around 35 degrees at night time, 10:30, and full of peoples.
Tamal and Amir Khan are spending many of the nights in large tents with dozens of people.
Okay, everybody, time to go to the sleep now. And everybody prepare to go to sleep. As you can see, this is different experience for everybody. Here we go. I'm wearing mask because there's too many people here and it's too risky to have a cold, and I don't want to have a cold during this time. Enjoy the sleep, guys. Sleep well.
The pilgrimage lasts for 5 or 6 days and includes many elements, including the circling of the Kaaba, the large black-covered square building at the centre of the Great Mosque of Mecca. Tamal's footage shows the Grand Mosque packed with people. His face is drenched in sweat as they begin walking around the Kaaba. He is only one of millions of people who will visit here during the pilgrimage.
I'm so excited I can't speak now, and this is speechless and amazing feeling. May Allah bless everybody.
Tamal and the other worshippers also visit walls depicting the devil and throw stones at it.
We're just throwing another 7 stones to the middle Jamara. It's the middle-sized devil.
Back on the plane, Tamal reflects on the journey.
Here we go, we are in Auckland in the plane now, and time back to go home, Christchurch. Our journey is finished and we come to 0 degrees from 50 degrees. This long journey, we are very tired and exhausted, looking forward to go to home, but it's an enjoyable journey actually.
It's now early 2020, almost a year since the attacks and when I first met Tamal. We're sitting around his dining room table, drinking Turkish coffee and eating Turkish delight. His family have gone home to Turkey and he is living alone again.
No. Sit.
The man sitting in front of me is certainly not the man I met a year ago. Then he was active, skinny, youthful. Now he looks older, more tired.
I was happy and social person, and I can't play football. I don't know when I can start back again, but I work hard for it. I want to be happy again. So I hope this future is never been happen again. This experience doesn't matter, any violence is not nice, so it's bad.
His body and mind are also not the only things in need of fixing.
My situations at the moment is I'm very struggled, and then my priority is look after myself first, but I want to spend time with my kids too, so I want to fix my relationship with my kids. So when I'm motivated, I'm happy. When I'm happy, of course, I can be good father. But of course, when you are, I'm in the antidepressants, using antidepressants or some pain relief kind of, etc. It's difficult for me, and still, flashbacks is images, But when slowly, I have this work, and then develop my relationships around me too.
1 year on, Tamal is facing some tough decisions. What to do about his business is one of them.
I can't go back to the work at the moment. I can't look after business. And my business partners have 2 businesses, so he is also tired. And also, He's not accepted, but he's also traumatized too from that terror attack. He's a strong man, but he's traumatized too. He's tired and he's exhausted and he's frustrated too. So we decide together to sell the business and then carry on to our life different way, maybe do something different or smaller, or I don't know, but I didn't make decision yet, but if I sell it, it's going to be help me to pay my mortgage.
Tamal has plans for the future. He saved the money donated to him from victim support and other organisations and is now looking to buy a small house. And he still wants to get back into football. But this is the end of this part of Tamal's story. A year of hell and heartbreak, but also one of recovery and great change. However, having lived through it all, his message now to New Zealand is simple.
Please don't hate us, because we are innocent people and we just want the good life as same as you want. New Zealand is also our house too, and we belong to New Zealand too. And we love New Zealand and we love New Zealand peoples. And my kids also New Zealanders too, so I feel like I'm New Zealander too.
And if you were listening to Tamal's story on your drive home or on the radio, you can watch the video online. We'll put it up there, Logan Church's documentary, on our Facebook page and on our website. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We will be back again tomorrow. Enjoy your night.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Health officials say public events can go ahead because there is no community spread of COVID-19, but they must have strong health measures in place. The Reserve Bank is considering unconventional tactics to help control economic fallouts like that of the coronavirus. The mother of a 2-year-old girl who the Crown says was killed by her father says she was concerned about his behaviour leading up to the death. And a Southland man who stole 2 police pistols and a patrol car was in breach of his prison release conditions when he was arrested. Those are the headlines. Our next news at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
To help retain kind of cash flow for businesses, because that's really the important and critical point here. That's what all of their interventions are really looking at.
Lately with me, Karen Hay, is your late night eye on the latest headlines and the people who are making them.
There's going to be a cash handout to all